Midnight came down like a blade. Not softly. Not gently. It cut through the world with cold intent, and everything beneath it bled. The storm had already claimed the sky. Clouds churned like wounded beasts, tearing at each other, swallowing the moon, then spitting it back out in flashes of pale light. Rain slashed sideways, sharp and unforgiving. Wind screamed through the high stone towers of the castle, rattling shutters, tearing banners loose, howling like it knew what was happening below. And down there, far below the warmth of torchlight and safety, Elara was running for her life. Bare feet slammed into frozen mud. Each step burned. Stones sliced her skin. Thorns clawed at her ankles, greedy and cruel. Snow mixed with blood beneath her, turning the ground dark, slick, treacherous. Her servant's dress, once plain grey, once clean, hung heavy and soaked, the hem stained deep red where it clung to her legs. She didn't dare stop. Not even when her lungs screamed. Not even when her vision blurred. Not even when pain bloomed white-hot in her side. Her hand was pressed there, fingers slick with blood, trembling as she failed, to hold herself together. Because she could hear them. Behind her. Shouts tore through the night. Harsh voices, sharpened by authority and fear. Spread out. She went this way. I can smell her, she's close. Wolves. Not just men. Not just guards. Shifters. Their senses were already locked on her. Fear had a scent. Pain had a taste. And Elara was drenched in both. Her chest hitched as she stumbled downhill, the forest rising up ahead of her like a wall of shadows. Branches clawed at her hair. Wet leaves slapped her face. The trees closed in, ancient and watching, their twisted roots like grasping hands. She slipped. Her knees slammed into the ground hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. Thunder cracked overhead at the exact same moment, splitting the sky open. The sound rolled through her bones, deep and violent, like the world itself was roaring its judgment. Elara cried out, not loud, not enough to give herself away, but the sound broke from her anyway, raw and helpless. For a second, just one, she stayed there on her hands and knees, shaking. Rain plastered her hair to her face. Mud smeared her palms. Blood dripped from her side, warm against the cold. This is how it ends, a quiet part of her whispered. No pack. No name. No one to claim her. Just a maid who ran too far and burned too bright. No, she breathed, her voice barely sounded at all. She pushed herself up again, teeth clenched so hard her jaw ached. Her body protested. Everything hurt. Every breath scraped her throat raw. And beneath all of it, beneath the fear, beneath the pain, something else stirred. Heat. Not the normal kind. Not the kind that came from blood loss or fever. This was different. It started low, deep inside her, like an ember buried under ash. With every step she took, with every heartbeat pounding in her ears, that ember flared brighter. Silver heat. It crawled along her ribs, slow and dangerous, coiling tight around her spine. Her skin prickled. Her bones ached, not with injury, but with pressure. With need. Her fingers curled involuntarily, nails digging into her palms. No. No, no, no. Her inner voice rose up sharp and desperate, louder than the storm, louder than the wolves. Don't let it out. Not again. Never again. She knew what would happen if she did. She had learned that lesson the hard way. The forest dipped suddenly, and she stumbled again, catching herself against the trunk of a massive oak. She pressed her back to it, chest heaving, forcing herself to be still. Forcing herself to breathe through the fire crawling under her skin. The tree was ancient. Its bark was rough and cold. For a fleeting moment, she imagined it could hide her. That it might shield her from the eyes and noses closing in. But the storm betrayed her. Lightning split the clouds. White light flooded the forest. And for that single, unforgiving heartbeat, the world froze. Elara's shadow stretched across the ground. It was wrong. Too tall. Too sharp. Its edges blurred and twisted, limbs lengthening, spine curving in a way no human body ever should. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw it. Then the light vanished. Darkness slammed back down. The shadow snapped back into her small, trembling shape. She squeezed her eyes shut, pressing her forehead to the tree. "I didn't mean to," she whispered, to no one and everyone. "I never meant to." The mark on her ribs pulsed. She could feel it now, even through the fabric of her dress. A faint glow bloomed beneath her skin, silver and alive, like moonlight trapped in flesh. It throbbed in time with her heart, each beat sending another wave of heat through her veins. Her legs threatened to give out. Pain surged suddenly, sharp and blinding, ripping a gasp from her chest. She doubled over, fingers clawing at her side as if she could physically hold herself together. The power inside her surged in response. It didn't like being caged. It never had. Memories flickered at the edges of her mind, too fast, too sharp. Screams. Firelight. The sound of her own voice begging someone to stop looking at her like that. Like she was a monster. Like she was a mistake. A howl rose in the distance. Closer now. They were tightening the circle. Elara forced herself upright again, teeth chattering, body shaking. She wiped rain and blood from her face with the back of her hand and started moving, deeper into the forest, each step heavier than the last. The ground sloped upward now, rocky and uneven. Roots snagged her toes. Her breath came in ragged bursts, white clouds in the cold air. The castle loomed behind her, half hidden by trees and storm, its towers dark against the sky. It had never been home. Just stone walls and whispered orders. Endless scrubbing. Endless silence. She had learned how to be invisible there. Until tonight. Until the wrong door opened. Until the wrong eyes saw the wrong light beneath her skin. Her foot slipped again, and this time she fell hard, rolling down a shallow incline before coming to a stop against a pile of wet leaves and stone. She lay there, stunned, staring up at the branches swaying violently overhead. Rain splattered her face. Her chest burned. Her side screamed. And still, the fire grew. She laughed once, breathless and broken. It tore out of her before she could stop it. Of course this would be how it felt. Like everything inside her was splitting apart. Her fingers dug into the ground, nails scraping rock. Her back arched as another wave of heat surged through her, stronger than before. Her teeth clenched so hard she tasted blood. No, she gasped. Please. She didn't know who she was begging. The ancestors she had never been allowed to claim. The moon that watched her without mercy. Or the power itself, coiled and waiting, patient as death. Footsteps crashed through the undergrowth. Voices shouted again, closer now, sharper. There. She fell. Fear punched through her chest, cold and sudden, momentarily cutting through the heat. Her eyes flew open. Panic surged. She scrambled backward, hands slipping in mud, breath coming in wild gasps. Her heart thundered in her ears. Run! You have to run. But her body wouldn't listen. Pain locked her muscles. Exhaustion weighed her down like chains. The silver mark flared brighter, responding to the threat, to the fear, to the blood. Her vision blurred at the edges. Just let it happen, a darker voice whispered, smooth and tempting. Let me protect you. Tears burned in her eyes. If she did, there would be no going back. She had seen what came after. She dragged herself upright again, leaning heavily against a rock, legs shaking so badly she could barely stand. Rain soaked her hair, plastered it to her cheeks and neck. Her whole body trembled, not just from cold, but from the effort of holding herself together. She could smell them now. Leather. Steel. Wet fur. They were close enough that she could hear their breathing between the thunderclaps. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. This is it. The thought came quiet and strange, almost calm. This is where they end you. A flash of lightning lit the clearing again. Figures moved between the trees. Tall. Armed. Their eyes glinted unnaturally bright in the darkness. One of them lifted his head, nostrils flaring. There, he said. She's bleeding. Anne. He stopped. Elara felt it at the same moment he did. A pressure. Heavy. Overwhelming. Ancient. The forest went still. Not quiet, still. The wind died. The rain softened, as if afraid to fall too loudly. Even the thunder seemed to hesitate, rolling farther away. The men froze, every one of them. Elara's breath hitched. Something had changed. She felt it before she understood it. The silver heat inside her stilled, not fading, not leaving, but waiting. Like it was bowing to something older. Something stronger. The air shifted. Footsteps sounded again, but these were different. Measured. Unhurried. Certain. They came from the shadows ahead, not behind. The guards turned as one, confusion rippling through them. Who's there? Someone barked. No answer came. Elara's vision swam, as she tried to focus, rain blurring everything. A tall shape emerged slowly from between the trees, cloak dark and heavy, rain sliding off his shoulders like it didn't dare cling to him. He stopped at the edge of the clearing. Moonlight broke through the clouds, just enough to catch his face. Gold eyes burned in the dark. Elara's breath caught painfully in her chest. She didn't know him. But something deep inside her, deeper than fear, deeper than pain, recognized him. The silver mark on her ribs pulsed once, hard, like a heartbeat. The man's gaze locked onto her. Not past her. Not through her. On her. His eyes softened just a fraction. Elara, he said. Her name, spoken like that, low, steady, certain, cut through the storm like a blade through silk. Her knees almost gave out. The guards stiffened. My king, one of them breathed. The Alpha King stepped fully into the light. Power rolled off him in waves, thick and undeniable. The forest seemed to lean toward him, branches bowing slightly under the weight of his presence. His gaze flicked briefly to the blood on Elara's dress, the way she clutched her side, the way she swayed on her feet. Something dark and dangerous flashed across his face. Then his attention snapped back to the men behind her. Enough, he said quietly. The word carried. It sank into the ground. Into bone. Into blood. The guards hesitated. Elara's heart pounded wildly as she stood there, trembling, caught between hunters and a king she had never spoken to, never dared to look at for too long when he passed through the halls. The Alpha King took a single step closer. And in a voice meant only for her, roughened by something she couldn't name, he said, "You're bleeding." It wasn't a question. She swallowed hard. The storm gathered itself again overhead, thunder rumbling low and distant, like the world holding its breath. And somewhere deep inside Elara, the fire waited, silver and patient, watching the king watch her. If you love dangerous destinies, forbidden mates, and heroines forged in fire, stay with this story. And subscribe to Moonbound Werewolf Romance Stories. Because this is where rejected souls rise. The forest did not just fall quiet. It submitted. The wind pulled back first, as if yanked by an unseen hand. Rain softened into a whisper against leaves and bark. Even the distant thunder seemed to retreat, rolling farther away, reluctant to intrude. The night drew in on itself, holding its breath. Elara felt it in her bones before she fully understood it. That heavy pressure, ancient, commanding, settled over the clearing like a crown being lowered onto the world. He stood there now, fully revealed by the broken moonlight. Alpha King Kael Ravaryn. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Unmoving, as if the forest itself had shaped him out of shadow and power. His dark cloak clung to his frame, rain sliding off him without leaving a mark. His boots were planted solidly in the mud, yet he looked untouched by the chaos that had consumed everything else. And his eyes? Gold? Not the soft amber of common wolves. Not the dull shine of a guard mid-shift. These eyes burned with a steady, dangerous intelligence, bright enough to cut through the darkness and pin Elara exactly where she stood. She couldn't look away. Her heart slammed so hard against her ribs it hurt. Not just from fear. Something else was tangled up in it now. Something unfamiliar. Something that made her breath catch and her skin prickle. He said her name again, quieter this time. Elara. The sound of it settled into her chest like warmth she hadn't earned. The guards behind her shifted uneasily. One took an unconscious step back. Another lowered his weapon just a fraction, as if his body had decided before his mind could argue. "My king," someone murmured, voice thick with awe and uncertainty. Kael Ravaryn didn't acknowledge them. Not yet. His gaze stayed on Elara, unblinking, assessing. It wasn't the look of a man seeing a frightened servant. It was the look of a predator recognizing something rare. Dangerous. Familiar in a way that made the air feel tight. Rain slid down Elara's lashes as she stood there, swaying slightly, blood still warm against her side. Her fingers clenched reflexively in the fabric of her dress, knuckles white. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But where did you run when the night itself answered to him? Kael took a step forward. The guards stiffened immediately. Hold, one of them said, unsure. My king, she. Kael raised one hand. That was all. The command wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. But it carried weight. The kind that pressed down on spines and shut mouths without resistance. Silence followed. He moved closer now, boots sinking slightly into the mud, his stride unhurried. Each step shortened the distance between them, and with it, Elara's fragile sense of balance. She could smell him then. Not blood. Not sweat. Pine and steel. Smoke and something older. Something that reminded her of standing too close to a fire, warm, dangerous, impossible to ignore. Her pulse stuttered. He stopped an arm's length away. Up close, the power rolling off him was almost suffocating. It wasn't aggressive. It didn't need to be. It was simply there, undeniable, like gravity. His gaze dipped briefly to her side. Blood? His jaw tightened. You're hurt, he said. Again, not a question. Elara swallowed. Her throat felt tight, raw. She nodded once, because words wouldn't come. Because speaking felt like it might shatter something fragile inside her. Kael's eyes flicked to the guards behind her then, and the temperature of the clearing seemed to drop. What happened? He asked them. No one answered immediately. Fear shifted, thick and sharp. These men had hunted her moments ago. Had barked orders and bared teeth. Now they stood like chastened pups, suddenly aware of the line they might have crossed. Finally, one of them cleared his throat. She was seen where she shouldn't have been. There was an incident. The council ordered. Kael's gaze snapped back to him. The guard flinched visibly. Ordered what? Kael asked. The words were calm. Controlled. Dangerous. The man hesitated, then forced the truth out. They ordered her seized. Or eliminated. If necessary. Elara's stomach dropped. She had known it, of course. Had felt it the moment the first shout rang out behind her. Still, hearing it said aloud carved something hollow and aching into her chest. Eliminated. Kael didn't look at her when he spoke again. You were willing to kill a maid, he said quietly, on the word of the council. She's not just a maid, another guard blurted out, desperation creeping into his voice. There's something wrong with her. We all felt it. The mark. Enough, Kael said. This time, the word cracked. The forest shuddered in response. Leaves trembled. Somewhere, a tree groaned softly, roots shifting under unseen pressure. Elara gasped as the silver heat inside her flared in response, sharp and sudden. Her knees buckled, and before she could stop herself, she sagged forward. Strong hands caught her. She froze. Kael's grip was firm, steady, impossibly warm through the rain-soaked fabric of her dress. One arm braced her back, the other steadying her at the elbow. He smelled even stronger up close, and the nearness of him sent a strange shiver through her entire body. For one terrifying second, she thought the silver fire might answer him. Her breath hitched. Kael looked down at her, his expression unreadable. Something flickered behind his eyes, recognition, maybe. Or confirmation. Careful now, Elara told herself desperately. Careful. She straightened abruptly, pulling away from his hold despite the protest of her injured side. Pain flared, bright and sharp, but she welcomed it. It anchored her. I'm fine, she said, the words coming out hoarse. I don't need. Kael shrugged off his cloak in one smooth motion, and held it out toward her. Take it, he said. The fabric was thick. Dry. Heavy with warmth. She stared at it like it was a trap. No, she said immediately. Too quickly. I can manage. His brows knit slightly. You're bleeding, he repeated. You're shaking. And you're barefoot in a storm. I've been worse, she shot back, lifting her chin. Defiance sparked through the fear, sharp and instinctive. Something almost like amusement ghosted across his face. Almost. You don't run like prey, he said, his voice lowering. Prey panics. Prey breaks. You ran like someone who knows exactly what happens if she's caught. The words hit too close. Elara's breath faltered. Her gaze flicked away from his, toward the dark forest, anywhere but his eyes. I ran because I didn't want to die, she said quietly. Kael watched her for a long moment. Then, softly, that's not the whole truth. Her fingers curled again, nails biting into her palms. The silver mark pulsed beneath her ribs, faint but insistent, as if it recognized something in him she didn't want to face. I don't belong here, she said instead. I never did. One of the guards shifted, clearly uncomfortable. My king, with respect. Kael didn't even turn his head. Leave us, he said. The words fell heavy into the clearing. The guard stared at him. My king. Now? The authority in his voice snapped like a whip. One by one, reluctantly, they backed away. Some looked confused. Some looked relieved. One looked angry, jaw tight, eyes burning with something that promised trouble later. But none of them argued again. Soon, the only sounds left were the soft patter of rain and Elara's uneven breathing. Kael turned back to her. You've been watching me, she said suddenly, the realization slipping out before she could stop it. His expression didn't change. Yes? The admission sent a chill down her spine. Why? She asked. Because you scrubbed blood from the throne room floor with your bare hands, he said, and never once looked away. Her throat tightened painfully. That blood belonged to someone you knew, he continued. And you kept scrubbing until your fingers split open. Her heart thudded. She hadn't known anyone had noticed. She hadn't known anyone cared. You didn't cry, Kael said. But your hands shook. Silence stretched between them. Rain slid down her face, indistinguishable from tears she refused to shed. You don't move like the others, he went on. You don't smell like fear all the time. And when the moon rises, something in you answers it. Elara's chest felt too tight. I'm just a maid, she said weakly. Kael's gaze hardened. No, he said. You're not. The silver heat stirred again, curling through her veins, restless and alert. Her skin prickled as if every nerve had come awake at once. "Then what am I?" she demanded, a crack forming in her voice despite her efforts. Kael stepped closer again, lowering his voice, the words meant only for her. "Someone the council is afraid of." Her breath caught. "They told you to kill me," she said. "Are you going to finish what they started?" For the first time since he'd appeared, Kael hesitated. It was brief. Barely there. But she saw it. Something dark passed through his eyes, conflict, perhaps. Or the weight of a crown that demanded choices no one should have to make. "No," he said at last. Relief washed through her so fast it made her dizzy. "But," he continued, "you are not safe." A bitter laugh escaped her. "I know. Not from them," Kael said. "From what you're becoming." Her heart stumbled. She wanted to deny it. To laugh it off. To pretend the fire under her skin wasn't real, that the mark wasn't glowing faintly even now. But standing this close to him, lying felt impossible. "I didn't ask for it," she whispered. "I know," he said. That was worse. Because he believed her. He held the cloak out again, closer this time, almost brushing her arm. "Take it," he said gently. "Before you collapse." She stared at the dark fabric, then at his face. At the steady patience in his eyes. At the quiet command beneath it. Finally, reluctantly, she reached out. The cloak settled over her shoulders, heavy and warm, carrying his scent with it. Her body reacted instantly, a shudder running through her, as heat seeped into her chilled skin. She hated how right it felt. Kael's gaze dropped to where the fabric fell open slightly at her side. The silver mark glowed faintly beneath her skin. He inhaled sharply. There it was. Confirmation. Elara pulled the cloak tighter, fear rising again. "You see it?" "Yes," he said. "And you still let them leave," she said, accusation threading her words. His jaw tightened. "For now," he said. "This is bigger than one night in the forest." Her stomach twisted. "What does that mean?" "It means," Kael said slowly, "that if you stay here, they will come for you again." Louder. With more justification. "And if I leave?" she asked. His eyes met hers. "Then I'll have to decide how far I'm willing to go to stop them." The weight of that settled heavily between them. Rain continued to fall, quiet and persistent. Elara stood there, wrapped in the Alpha King's cloak, bleeding, burning, caught between fear and something far more dangerous. Hope. And somewhere deep inside her, the silver fire stirred, recognizing the man standing before her, not as a savior, not as an enemy, but as something that would change everything. The forest did not rush them after that. It settled. Rain thinned to a soft, steady fall. The wind moved away, leaving behind a hush so deep it felt deliberate, as though the world itself had decided to listen. Kael stood a few steps from Elara, close enough that she could feel his presence even when she refused to look at him. Close enough that the silver fire inside her stayed awake, restless, but strangely calm, like an animal that had finally stopped thrashing against its cage. She didn't speak right away. Neither did he. She focused on breathing. On staying upright. On not leaning into the warmth of his cloak, even though her body wanted to. Needed to. Her side still throbbed, pain sharp and insistent, but she ignored it. Pain was familiar. Pain was manageable. Silence, somehow, was worse. Because silence gave memory room to breathe. You should sit, Kael said quietly. She shook her head. If I sit, I won't get back up. That's not weakness, he said. She laughed under her breath, bitter and raw. You don't know what weakness looks like on me. His gaze sharpened, but he didn't interrupt. He didn't correct her. He just waited. That, more than anything else, unsettled her. Elara took a slow step toward a fallen log at the edge of the clearing and lowered herself onto it, careful of her side. The cloak pulled around her like a shadow. She kept her eyes on the ground, on the mud and leaves and faint glow of silver reflecting off wet stone. Kael remained standing for a moment longer, then sat opposite her, far enough to give space, close enough to stay present. He rested his forearms on his knees, posture relaxed but alert, as if he were listening to something only he could hear. The firelight of the moon slipped through the clouds again, pale and watchful. You said they are afraid of me, Elara said at last. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. The council? The guards? Everyone? Yes, Kael said. Why? He studied her face, as though weighing how much truth she could bear. Because fear is easier than understanding, he said finally. And power they can't control terrifies them. She swallowed. I didn't always know I had power, she said. Not like this. Her fingers twisted in the fabric of the cloak, knuckles whitening. When I was little, she went on, I thought I was broken. The words came slowly at first, careful and deliberate, like stepping onto thin ice. My pack lived near the northern ridges. Small. Tight-knit. Everyone knew everyone. Or so I thought. She paused, breath catching briefly before she forced it steady again. I was different. I felt things too deeply. The moon never just shone for me. It pulled. Kael didn't speak. Elara closed her eyes, and the forest faded. She was small again. Bare feet on cold stone. The smell of pine and ash thick in the air. Voices murmuring behind her, low and uneasy. The elders standing in a circle, faces tight, with something between suspicion and dread. I remember the night of my first shift, she said quietly. Everyone gathers for it. It's supposed to be beautiful. Her lips trembled, but she kept going. The moon rose full and bright. I stepped into the circle like I was told. My mother stood at the edge, smiling. She looked proud. Gods, she looked so proud. Her chest tightened painfully. When the change started, it hurt. More than they said it would. My bones burned. My skin felt like it was tearing itself apart. I screamed. She inhaled sharply, the memory vivid and merciless. And when the fire came, it wasn't red. It wasn't gold. It was silver. Her eyes opened again, reflecting moonlight. Not a glow. Not a shimmer. Flames. Real flames. They licked across my arms, my ribs. They didn't burn the ground, but they burned everything else. Fear. Trust. Hope. She let out a shaky breath. The circle broke. Elders shouted. Wolves snarled. Someone called me cursed before I even finished changing. Kael's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. They tried to put it out, Elara continued. Water. Earth. Spells they hadn't used in generations. Nothing worked. The fire didn't hurt me, but it hurt them just to look at it. Her hands trembled now, and she didn't bother hiding it. My mother ran to me. She grabbed my shoulders. She told me it was okay. That we'd figure it out together. Her voice cracked. They dragged her away. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. She screamed my name, Elara whispered. Over and over. She begged them not to take me. Not to hurt me. Kael shifted slightly, but still said nothing. She died that night, Elara said. Not from the fire. From fear. From the pack turning on her because she loved me more than she feared what I was. Her throat closed. I was exiled before the sun rose. The words settled heavy between them. They branded me, she added, lifting the edge of the cloak just enough to reveal the faint scar near her ribs, beneath the glowing mark. Not as punishment, they said. As a warning. Her laugh came out hollow. Don't come back. Don't be seen. Don't let anyone know what you are. Kael's eyes were dark now, shadowed with something that looked dangerously close to anger. They told the other packs, Elara went on. Whispered stories. Monsters. Children of flame. They said my bloodline was extinct. That it had been erased for a reason. Her gaze flicked to his face, searching. The silver flame bloodline, she said. You know it. Yes, Kael said quietly. The confirmation sent a shiver through her. They told me it could bind alphas, she said. Or burn them alive from the inside. They said it drove its bearers mad. That we always ended up destroying the packs we loved. Her shoulders slumped. So they decided it was safer if I never loved anyone at all. The rain resumed its steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. Elara stared down at her hands. I learned to hide, she said. To make myself small. Quiet. Useful. I worked kitchens. Stables. Anywhere no one looked too closely. Her mouth twisted faintly. Being a maid was easy. No one expects a maid to be powerful. Or dangerous. Or worthy of notice. Kael watched her intently, his gaze steady and unwavering. I scrubbed floors until my hands bled, she said. I kept my head down. I obeyed. I told myself that if I never wanted anything, I couldn't lose it. Her breath hitched. But the fire never left, she whispered. It just waited. She pressed her palm lightly against her ribs, feeling the warmth there. I thought I was unlovable, she said. Who would choose someone like me? Someone whose very existence scares people. Kael leaned forward slightly. Someone who sees more than what frightens them, he said. She shook her head. You say that now, she replied. But you didn't see what they saw. You didn't hear the way they said my name. I see you, Kael said. The words were simple. Quiet. But they landed with a weight that made her breath stutter. Elara looked up at him then, really looked at him. He wasn't watching her like a king measuring a threat. He wasn't watching her like a man assessing a weapon. He was listening. Truly listening. No judgment clouded his expression. No fear lurked in his eyes. Only focus. And something else she didn't dare name. "I didn't want to run tonight," she said softly. I opened the wrong door. I heard voices talking about the council. About the old laws. About the flame." Her hands clenched again. I knew then. I knew they were going to decide my fate without ever asking me who I was. Kael nodded slowly. "They've done that before." "Yes," she said. "And they'll do it again." She met his gaze, something fierce stirring beneath the fear. "I don't want to be hunted anymore," she said. "I don't want to spend my life apologizing for surviving." Kael studied her for a long moment. "You won't," he said. The certainty in his voice sent a ripple through her. "You don't know that," she said. "I do," he replied. "Because you're still standing." She let out a soft, broken sound that might have been a laugh, might have been a sob. "I'm tired," she admitted. "Tired of being afraid of myself." The silver fire pulsed gently, almost in agreement. Kael rose then, slowly, deliberately, and knelt in front of her, bringing his gaze level with hers. "Listen to me," he said. "Your power does not make you unworthy. It does not make you cursed. It makes you rare." She searched his face, desperate for any sign of deception. "And dangerous," she said. "Yes," Kael said without hesitation. "But danger is not evil." The words settled deep inside her, touching something that had been wounded for far too long. "You survived exile," he continued. "You survived fear. You survived yourself. That doesn't make you broken." His voice softened. "It makes you strong." Elara's vision blurred. No one had ever said that to her before. The rain continued to fall around them, quiet and steady, as if the world had decided to give them this moment. For the first time in her life, Elara allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't defined by running. And somewhere deep inside her, the silver flame burned, not wild, not destructive, but alive. The path Kael chose did not lead back to the castle. It led away from everything that had ever caged her. They moved through the forest in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because the night itself seemed to demand reverence. The trees grew older the deeper they went. Trunks thickened, roots breaking through the earth like the bones of giants long buried. Moss clung to stone in heavy, velvety sheets. The air changed, cooler, denser, humming faintly, as though the ground beneath their feet remembered things the world above had forgotten. Elara followed Kael because her body did before her mind could argue. Each step sent a dull ache through her side, but the pain no longer felt urgent. Something else had taken its place. A pull. Subtle at first, then unmistakable. The silver fire inside her stirred with every yard they crossed, warming her blood, sharpening her senses. She could feel the earth now. Feel the slow pulse beneath soil and stone. "This place," she murmured at last, breaking the silence. "I've never been here." "No one has," Kael replied without looking back. "Not in generations." The forest thinned suddenly, opening into a hollow ringed by ancient stones. Massive roots twisted up from the ground, wrapping around broken pillars etched with symbols so worn they were nearly erased. Bones, old, pale, reverently arranged, lined the edges of the clearing, half swallowed by earth and moss. At its center stood an altar of white stone, cracked down the middle, its surface scarred by time and something far more violent. The moon broke free of the clouds overhead. Silver light poured down. Elara stopped breathing. The shrine answered her presence immediately. The air vibrated. The stones hummed softly, a low sound felt more than heard. Symbols along the altar flared faintly, lines of light threading through ancient carvings like veins awakening after a long sleep. And then, her name, not spoken aloud, whispered, Elara. It came from the walls, from the roots, from the bones beneath her feet. 1,000 voices laid together, neither male nor female, neither kind nor cruel. Just aware. She staggered, clutching Kael's arm as her knees threatened to buckle. Her voice shook. Did you hear that? Yes, Kael said quietly. Her heart pounded wildly. They are saying my name. They've been waiting for it, he replied. Fear bloomed sharp and cold in her chest. I don't understand, she whispered. Why here? Why me? Kael guided her forward, slow and steady, until she stood before the altar. The silver mark beneath her ribs burned now, no longer gentle, no longer patient. It pulsed with purpose. Because this shrine was built for you, Kael said. The words landed like a blow. No, Elara said immediately, shaking her head. That's not possible. The moonbound shrines don't awaken without reason, he said. And they don't answer just anyone. She took a step back, breath coming faster. I told you, she said. I don't want this. I don't want to be a symbol. Or a weapon. Or a story whispered to scare children. The whispering grew louder. The stones brightened. Elara. Her chest tightened painfully. Kael's voice cut through the rising hum, calm but firm. Listen to them. I don't want to, she said, panic threading her words. You need to. The altar flared bright silver. The world tilted. Elara gasped as images slammed into her mind, violent, overwhelming. A wolf crowned in fire. A throne split down the middle. Alphas kneeling. Alphas burning. Blood soaking into sacred ground. Her hands flew to her head as she cried out, dropping to her knees. The visions didn't stop. They pressed in, relentless. A voice rose above the rest, ancient and clear. The one with the mark shall either crown the Alpha, or end his reign. The words echoed through her bones. No, she whispered. No, no, no. The vision shifted. She saw herself standing before a circle of elders, silver fire coiling around her like living light. She saw Kael beside her, or against her. She couldn't tell which. The child of the silver flame returns, the voice intoned. Blood of binding. Blood of ruin. The images shattered. Elara collapsed forward, palms pressed to the cold stone of the altar, chest heaving. Silence fell hard and sudden. She stayed there, shaking, breath ragged, the taste of fear sharp on her tongue. Kael knelt beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. You see now, he said quietly. She laughed, broken and disbelieving. See what? That the world wants to use me again. That the world fears you for a reason, he said. And that reason is power. She lifted her head slowly, eyes bright with unshed tears. They said I would destroy Pax, she said. That I would end everything I touched. Kael met her gaze steadily. Prophecies don't promise destruction, he said. They warn of choice. She shook her head. Choice between what? Being a monster or being a martyr? Between submission and sovereignty, he replied. The words hung between them. I don't want a destiny, Elara whispered. I want to be safe. Kael's expression softened, something raw flickering behind his eyes. I know, he said. Her voice dropped even lower. I want a life where I don't wake up afraid of myself. The silver fire pulsed painfully in her ribs. And I want, she stopped, breath hitching. Kael waited. I want you, she admitted softly. But if what they say is true, if my power can bind or burn alphas, her voice broke. What happens to you if I lose control? Kael reached out then, slow and deliberate, and placed his hand over her heart. The contact sent a shock through her entire body. Her breath caught sharply. I am not afraid of your fire, he said. You should be, she replied. I am afraid of a world that would rather kill you than understand you, he said. I am afraid of councils that twist prophecy to justify cruelty. His thumb pressed gently into the fabric over her chest. But I am not afraid of you. The whispering began again, softer now, reverent. Child of the silver flame. Elara squeezed her eyes shut. I don't know if I can carry this, she said. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Kael leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. You already are, he said. You just don't believe it yet. The moonlight intensified, bathing them both in silver. The altar cracked further, a line of light splitting stone clean in two. Somewhere deep beneath the shrine, something ancient stirred. Elara opened her eyes. And for the first time since her exile, she understood the truth that frightened her more than anything else. She could run from the world. But destiny had already found her. And it was not done speaking. The shrine did not let them leave quietly. The moment Elara stepped back from the cracked altar, the silver light dimmed, but it did not vanish. It sank into the stone, into the roots, into the bones beneath the earth, like embers buried under ash. The whispering stopped, yet the silence that followed was not peace. It was tension. A held breath. A warning. Kael felt it too. His shoulders squared as he turned, eyes scanning the perimeter of the clearing. The forest no longer felt neutral. The air had changed again, thicker, sharper, charged with a sense of being watched. They know, he said quietly. Elara's heart skipped. Who? The ones who listen for disturbances like this, Kael replied. And the ones who fear them. As if summoned by the words, a howl cut through the trees. Not a lone howl. A chorus. It rolled across the forest in layered waves, deep, territorial, answered by another howl farther away, then another. Different pitches. Different voices. Different packs. Elara's stomach dropped. They are coming, she whispered. Yes, Kael said. And not just one. The first figures emerged from the trees with no attempt at stealth. Tall. Armored. Their cloaks bore the marks of neighboring territories, sigils Elara recognized from whispered gossip in castle corridors. Rival alphas. They came with their heads high and their dominance bared, eyes glowing in shades of gold, amber, and red. Power clashed in the air as they entered the sacred ground, each one testing the limits of the other's presence. Behind them came the council. Not the full body, but enough. Elders draped in heavy ceremonial robes, their faces lined with age and hardened by belief. They moved slower, supported by guards and staffs etched with old runes. Their eyes were fixed not on Kael, but on Elara. Hunger flickered there. Fear. And something far worse. Vindication. The shrine has awakened, one elder said, his voice echoing unnaturally. After centuries of silence. Another stepped forward, gaze sharp and accusing. And it answers to her. Elara felt the silver fire stir in response, uneasy and alert. Kael moved subtly, placing himself half a step in front of her. It was not a full shield, but it was a statement. This ground is sacred, he said. You had no right to enter. A rival alpha laughed, low and mocking. Sacred ground belongs to all wolves, King Ravaryn. Or have you forgotten that while hiding a weapon behind your back? Elara flinched at the word. Weapon. She is not a weapon, Kael said coldly. She is prophecy, the elder snapped. And prophecy is never harmless. The air rippled. From the shadows beyond the clearing, something else stirred. Elara felt it before she saw it. A wrongness. A pressure that crawled across her skin, raising goose flesh along her arms. The silver fire reacted instantly, flaring hot and sharp, as if warning her. The shadows thickened. They peeled away from the trees like living smoke, forming shapes too fluid to be solid. Eyes glowed within them, pale, hungry, drawn to the silver light still humming beneath her skin. Shadow beasts. Creatures born of corrupted magic and old bloodshed, long thought dormant. Long thought gone. They smell her, one alpha muttered. They feel the flame, another said. It calls to them. Elara's breath came faster. Kael's hand brushed her arm, grounding, steady. Stay behind me. I don't want you fighting my battles, she whispered. His jaw tightened. This isn't just yours anymore. The council elder raised his staff, slamming it into the earth. The sound cracked like thunder. Enough, he intoned. This ends now. He turned his gaze to Kael. You will hand her over, the elder said. Or you will be stripped of your crown. The clearing went deathly still. Every rival alpha leaned in, interest sharpening. This was not just about Elara now. This was about power. About hierarchy. About who would rise and who would fall. Kael didn't answer immediately. Elara felt his hesitation like a blade pressed to her throat. The elder continued, voice dripping with authority. The prophecy is clear. The child of the silver flame will either crown an alpha, or end his reign. His eyes narrowed. We will not risk our world on uncertainty. She will be contained. Studied. If necessary, destroyed. Elara's chest constricted painfully. Contained. destroyed. She felt small again. Like the girl in the circle. Like the exile branded and cast out. Kael's silence stretched. The rival alphas watched him closely, scenting weakness, testing dominance. Choose, Kael Ravaryn, the elder said. Your throne, or the girl. The words echoed. Elara didn't wait for his answer. She stepped out from behind him. Kael turned sharply. Elara. No, she said, her voice shaking but firm. I won't stand here while they bargain over my life. She faced the council, the alphas, the shadows creeping closer at the edge of the clearing. You want me, she said. Fine. But don't pretend this is about safety. This is about control. Murmurs rippled through the gathering. You fear me because you don't own me, she continued. Because you don't know how to cage fire. The silver mark flared bright beneath her ribs, visible even through the cloak. The shadow beasts recoiled slightly, hissing. Kael watched her, something fierce and conflicted burning in his eyes. The elder sneered. You see. Already defiant. Already dangerous. Elara turned back to Kael then. This was the moment. The one the prophecy whispered about. The one everyone was waiting for. She searched his face, really searched it. For certainty. For a promise. For proof that choosing her wouldn't cost him everything. She saw the war there. King versus man. Duty versus desire. Crown versus fire. And she understood. Before he could speak, she shook her head. Don't, she said softly. Kael's breath hitched. If you choose me, she went on, they'll never stop coming. They'll tear your kingdom apart to get to me. I don't care, he said fiercely. I do, she replied. The words hurt to say. I won't be the reason your people bleed. She stepped back, pulling the cloak from her shoulders and pressing it into his hands. Thank you, she said, her voice breaking. For seeing me. Then she turned and ran. Elara. Kael shouted. She didn't look back. The forest swallowed her fast, shadows parting and closing behind her, as if answering her call. The silver fire surged, not exploding, not consuming, but driving her forward with relentless force. Behind her, chaos erupted. Shadow beasts lunged, drawn by the fading echo of her power. Rival alphas clashed, dominance colliding in violent bursts. Kael's roar split the night, fury and loss braided together. But Elara didn't stop. Tears blurred her vision as she ran, heartbreaking with every step. She had wanted safety. She had wanted him. Instead, she chose exile again, this time on her own terms. As the forest thinned and the sounds of battle faded behind her, Elara slowed, breath ragged, chest aching. She pressed a trembling hand to her ribs. The silver fire answered. No more, she whispered to herself. No more running because I'm afraid. Her tears dried. Her spine straightened. If the world wants a monster, she said, voice low and steady, then I'll decide what kind. The moon broke through the clouds once more, bathing her in silver light. And somewhere far behind her, a king stood amid ruin, knowing with devastating certainty. The world had just made its greatest mistake. The forest did not welcome her at first. It watched. Branches creaked without wind. Roots curled beneath the soil like sleeping animals. The air stayed cold even as dawn threatened the horizon, as if the night itself refused to let her go. Elara moved through it anyway. Not running now. Walking. Each step deliberate. Each breath a decision. By the time the sun finally bled pale gold through the trees, she was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with her body. Her side still ached where the silver mark burned under her skin, but it was a distant pain. Familiar. Almost honest compared to the deeper ache hollowing her chest. She had left him. Again. The thought pressed down hard, and she stopped near a stream, gripping the bark of a birch tree until her knuckles went white. "You did the right thing," she whispered, saying it out loud as if that might make it settle. The water murmured back, indifferent. She sank to her knees and pressed her forehead to the cool earth. For a moment, just one, she let herself feel it all. The loss. The want. The way Kael's voice had sounded when he said her name. The way his presence had felt like gravity, like standing too close to something massive and alive. Then she inhaled slowly. And pushed it down. She stayed there until the forest shifted again. Not with threat. With recognition. The silver fire stirred, not flaring, not warning, but guiding. A pull, gentle and persistent, tugging her deeper into the wild. Toward a place untouched by councils or crowns. Toward quiet. She followed it. By nightfall, she reached a clearing tucked between ancient stones, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of rain and moonlight. The air here felt different. Softer. As if the world itself had decided to lower its voice. Elara collapsed near the stones, too tired to think, too drained to fear. When sleep took her, it was deep and dreamless. And when she woke, she was not alone. She sensed him before she saw him. That familiar pressure in the air. That steady, contained power that did not rush or roar, but simply existed, undeniable. Her eyes snapped open. Kael stood at the edge of the clearing. He looked different. Not crowned. Not armored. No symbols of kingship or command. Just a dark cloak, travel-worn boots, and a man who looked like he hadn't slept since the night she left. Their gazes locked. Neither moved. Neither spoke. The silence stretched, not fragile, but dense. Loaded with everything they hadn't said. "You followed me," Elara said finally, her voice hoarse. "Yes," Kael replied. "Why?" He took a step closer, then stopped himself, as if crossing that invisible line required permission he wasn't sure he had. "Because letting you go felt like dying slowly," he said. "And I am tired of slow deaths." Her chest tightened. "You should have stayed," she said. "Your kingdom is intact," he cut in quietly. "Bruised, angry, alive." Another step closer. "I did not come as a king," he continued. "I came as a man who refuses to let fear decide his life." She laughed softly, without humor. "Fear decides everything." "Not here," he said. "Not now." The space between them closed inch by inch, not rushed, not claimed. Earned. He knelt beside her, careful, as if she might vanish if he moved too fast. His eyes dropped to the faint blood stains on her dress, the raw exhaustion etched into her face. "You're hurt," he said. "I've been worse," she replied. "Let me see." She hesitated. Trust was not a switch. It was a bridge, and bridges took time. But she nodded. Kael removed his cloak slowly and draped it around her shoulders, warmth settling like a held breath. He didn't touch her skin at first. Just hovered. Waiting. When he finally pressed his palm gently against her side, the silver mark reacted, not with pain, but with recognition. Heat spread, soothing instead of burning. She gasped quietly. His jaw tightened. "Does it hurt?" "No," she whispered. "It listens." "So do I," he said. And he meant it. As he cleaned the wound, his movements were steady, reverent. Every brush of his fingers was deliberate, restrained. He did not rush. Did not take. He treated her body like something sacred, not dangerous. Tears pricked her eyes without warning. "Why are you crying?" he asked softly. "Because you are being gentle," she said. "And no one ever is when they are afraid of what I am." Kael stilled. Then he met her gaze, unwavering. "I am afraid," he admitted. "But not of you." The truth of it hit harder than any accusation. They stayed there as night fell again, the moon rising slow and full above the clearing. He built a small fire. She leaned against one of the stones, wrapped in his cloak, watching the flames dance. Time stretched. Quiet moments filled the space between words. He showed her the scars on his arms, old battles, betrayals paid for in blood. She traced them lightly, her touch tentative, reverent in return. "I was taught never to show weakness," he said. "Kings don't bleed in front of others." She smiled faintly. "Then you were taught wrong." He watched her with something close to wonder. "You say things like that as if the world might actually listen." "Maybe it will," she said. "One day." They stood when the music of the night shifted, crickets rising, wind softening. Without speaking, Kael offered his hand. She hesitated only a second before taking it. They moved together under the moonlight, slow and uncertain at first. Not dancing in the way ballrooms demanded, but swaying, adjusting, learning each other's rhythm. Her head rested against his chest. His heartbeat was strong. Steady. Real. "I see you," he murmured, his voice low, almost lost to the night. "All of you. The fire. The fear. The strength you pretend you don't have." Her breath caught. "And I still choose you," he continued. "Not as prophecy. Not as salvation. As you." She lifted her face, eyes shining. "So trust me," he said. "Or tell me to leave. I will do either. But I will not pretend this doesn't matter." Their faces were inches apart. The world narrowed. Almost a kiss. Almost a claim. She stopped just short, pressing her forehead to his. "I want to trust you," she whispered. "But if I do, everything changes." He nodded. "I know." They stayed there, suspended in that fragile, aching space. Not yet broken. Not yet whole. Just two souls standing on the edge, choosing, for this moment, not to fall apart. The night did not end gently. It never did when truth was about to be torn open. The fire had burned low. The moon had climbed higher. For a brief, fragile stretch of time, the world had felt quiet enough to believe in mercy. Then the forest shifted. Not the subtle breathing of leaves, or the soft warning of animals. This was heavier. Purposeful. The kind of movement that carried intent like a blade hidden in cloth. Kael felt it first. His spine went rigid. His hand tightened around Elara's before she could ask why. His head lifted, eyes sharpening, gold light flickering just beneath the surface. "Stay behind me," he said, low and firm. Her pulse spiked. "What is it?" "Too many heartbeats," he replied. "And none of them friendly." The clearing filled with sound. Boots crushing leaves. Armor brushing against bark. The snap of branches forced aside without care. They came from every direction. Torches flared to life, their fire harsh and unnatural against the silver wash of moonlight. Wolves stepped into view in half-shifted forms, teeth bared, eyes burning with suspicion and something uglier beneath it. Judgment. At their center stood the council. Robed figures marked with sigils of authority, their faces carved into expressions that had never learned softness. Elders who had outlived compassion. Leaders who mistook control for order. Elara's breath caught. She knew them. Even after all these years, she knew the weight of their gaze. The way they looked at her not as a girl, not even as a wolf, but as a problem that refused to stay buried. Kael moved without thinking, placing himself fully in front of her. "You have no right to be here," he said, his voice carrying across the clearing like a warning bell. An elder stepped forward, silver hair bound tight, eyes cold. "We go where threats gather," the elder replied. "And she is the greatest threat this realm has seen in generations." Elara felt the words land like stones. Threat. Weapon. Monster. They never needed new language for her. The old ones always worked just fine. "She is under my protection," Kael said. A ripple went through the crowd. Protection implied choice. It implied defiance. The elder's gaze flicked to him, sharp and assessing. "Then you have already chosen poorly, Alpha King." Kael didn't look back at Elara, but she felt the tension in his body, the careful restraint holding something far more dangerous in check. "You speak as if you know her," he said. "We know what she is," another council member snapped. "The silver flame does not belong in this age." A murmur spread. Silver flame. The words slithered through the clearing, igniting fear like dry tinder. Elara's chest tightened. Her skin prickled. The mark on her ribs pulsed, heat stirring beneath flesh like a waking beast. Kael's jaw clenched. "You speak of legends." "No," the first elder said. "We speak of bloodlines. Of extinction that should have remained final." Torches lifted higher. Light caught Elara's face. Recognition struck the crowd like lightning. Gasps. Whispers. Fear blooming fast and unchecked. "It's her. The Maid. The cursed one." Elara stepped forward despite Kael's hand tightening at her back. "No," she said quietly. "I'm just a girl who survived." The elder's lips curled. "You survived because you were allowed to." That was when it happened. A young wolf, barely more than a boy, pushed through the crowd, eyes wide with something close to awe. "Show them," he said, voice trembling. "Show them the mark." "No," Kael snapped. Too late. Hands reached for her. Instinct took over. The silver flame surged. Not fully. Not unleashed. Just enough. Heat exploded outward, a blinding arc of light that knocked wolves back and sent torches flying. The ground trembled. Stones cracked. The air screamed. Elara cried out, clutching her side as the power answered fear with ferocity. The council recoiled. "There," one of them shouted. "You see? A weapon." Kael turned, grabbing her shoulders, grounding her with sheer force of presence. "Elara, look at me." She did. His eyes were fierce, steady, refusing to let her spiral. "Breathe," he said. "I've got you." The elder raised a staff etched with binding runes. "Alpha King," he said coldly. "Step aside. This ends now." Silence fell. Every eye turned to Kael. This was the moment. The one that would be remembered. Twisted. Retold. The throne or the girl. Order or truth. Kael's hand did not leave Elara's. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped fully beside her. Not in front. Beside. "I will not hand her over," he said. "Not today. Not ever." Shock rippled through the clearing. "You would risk civil war," the elder demanded. "Yes," Kael replied. "If that is the cost of refusing to become a tyrant." The council's faces hardened. "So be it," the elder said. "Then she will be hunted." Elara felt something inside her crack. Not fear. Resolve. She stepped away from Kael. "No," she said. He turned sharply. "Elara." "They won't stop," she continued, voice shaking but clear. "Not while I stand near you. Not while they think you can be weakened through me." Her gaze swept the crowd. "You want a monster? Fine. But you don't get to take him down with me." The silver flame roared to life. Not a burst. A flood. Light tore through her veins, searing and pure. Her scream cut the air as the ground split beneath her feet, ancient runes buried deep beneath the soil lighting up in response. The forest howled. Wolves fell back, shields raised, eyes wide with terror. Kael reached for her, but the heat forced him back. "Elara," he shouted. She looked at him one last time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I won't let them use me again." Then she ran. Not away from fear. Toward transformation. The trees blurred. The world narrowed to breath and pain and fire. Her bones sang as the silver flame surged, reshaping, reclaiming. Behind her, the council shouted orders. Wolves gave chase. Ahead of her, the wild opened its arms. And somewhere deep within the inferno tearing her apart and remaking her, Elara finally stopped running from who she was. Because betrayal had stripped away the last illusion. And there was no going back. The world broke before she returned. It began with sound. A low, grinding groan beneath the earth, like something ancient shifting in its sleep. Stones cracked along the forest floor where Elara's silver fire had torn through the ground. The moon shrine shuddered, its roots splitting, bone-white runes blazing awake after centuries of silence. Wolves scattered. Alphas shouted orders that no one followed. The council's authority dissolved into panic as the shadow beasts came, not summoned, not controlled, but drawn. They crawled from the dark seams between trees, bodies half-formed, eyes empty, hunger absolute. Creatures born of old fear and older mistakes. Kael fought at the center of it all. Not as a king. As a shield. Blood streaked his arms. His breath came hard. He tore through shadows with claw and steel, placing himself wherever the danger grew thickest, every strike fueled by one singular truth burning through his chest. She ran because she believed it would save him. He would not let that be true. Elara, he roared again, her name ripped raw from his throat as another beast lunged. No answer. Only the chaos. The council tried to regroup, shouting for bindings, for ancient chains meant to subdue powers they barely understood. But the ground itself rejected them. The shrine flared brighter, the runes glowing silver-white, answering a call older than law. Then the fire changed. It wasn't wild anymore. It was focused. A column of silver light erupted at the edge of the clearing, so bright it swallowed the night. Wind tore outward, flattening grass, snapping branches, forcing wolves to their knees. The shadow beasts screamed. Not in rage. In terror. The light dimmed just enough for her to be seen. Elara stepped forward. She was no longer running. Her hair lifted as if caught in an unseen current, silver fire threading through the dark strands like living veins of light. The mark on her ribs burned openly now, no longer hidden, no longer restrained, etched into her skin like a crown turned sideways. Her eyes were not gold. They were silver. Not empty. Not cruel. Ancient. Every step she took pressed meaning into the earth. Runes flared beneath her feet, responding, aligning. The shrine stones rose higher, reassembling themselves, whole again for the first time since they had been buried in fear. The wolves felt it. They felt her. Knees hit the ground, not in command, not in ritual, but in instinctive recognition. Alphas bowed without knowing why. Warriors dropped their weapons, breath stolen by a presence that did not demand obedience. It inspired it. Kael turned slowly. The sight of her hit him harder than any blow. She looked whole. Terrifying. Beautiful. Alive in a way the world had never allowed her to be. Elara, he breathed. She met his gaze across the ruined clearing. And she smiled. Not softly. Not apologetically. But with a quiet, unbreakable certainty. The ancestors spoke then. Not in thunder. In her blood. Voices layered through her veins, women and men who had burned before her, who had been hunted, silenced, erased. Their grief did not weigh her down. It lifted her. Child of the silver flame, they whispered. Not weapon. Not sacrifice. Choice. Elara raised her hands. The silver fire answered. It surged outward, not to destroy, but to reveal. Shadow beasts froze mid-lunge as the light stripped them down to truth, fear-given form, hatred without will. They unraveled under her gaze, dissolving into ash that scattered harmlessly across the forest floor. The council screamed. Stop her. She'll end us all. But Elara's voice cut through them, calm and resonant, carried by something deeper than sound. No, she said. I won't. She turned to the elders, eyes burning with clarity. You taught the world to fear what you could not control, she continued. You called it protection. You called it law. But it was always fear. The silver flame coiled tighter around her, forming a halo of light that crowned her head, fierce and undeniable. I am not your weapon, she said. And I am not your sacrifice. The ground shook as the shrine fully awakened, ancient pillars rising from the earth, etched with the names of those who had come before. Their stories. Their blood. Their defiance. Kael stepped forward, unable to stop himself. She felt him before she saw him. The fire did not burn him. It parted. He stood before her now, battered and blooded and unbowed, his gold eyes locked on hers. You came back, he said quietly. I never left, she replied. I just stopped running. The council fell silent. This was no longer theirs to command. Elara turned one final time, addressing the world itself. The silver flame does not exist to crown kings, she said. Or end them. It exists to remind us that power without compassion rots. And fear without truth destroys. Her gaze softened as it returned to Kael. But choice, she said. Choice is what saves us. She reached out. This time, when their fingers touched, the world did not recoil. It breathed. The ruin settled. The forest stilled. The moon shone brighter, no longer cold, no longer distant. Around them, wolves bowed, not to a ruler, but to a future that had finally arrived. And Elara stood at its center, no longer a maid, no longer a fugitive, no longer a myth whispered in terror. She was fire made flesh. And she had chosen herself. The silence that followed her choice was not empty. It was listening. The forest held its breath. The shrine's awakened stones hummed with low resonance, as if remembering their purpose after centuries of forced sleep. The silver fire around Elara did not flicker now. It burned steady, controlled, answering her will instead of her fear. This was the difference. Before, the power had chased her like a storm she could not outrun. Now it stood behind her like a spine. She took another step forward, and the ground answered. Cracks sealed themselves beneath her feet. Roots slithered back into place. Even the air changed, pressure lifting, fear thinning like fog burned away by morning light. The chaos had peaked. And now it broke. The remaining shadow beasts did not charge again. They shrank. Folded inward. Their forms lost cohesion, as if a presence rewrote the rules that allowed them to exist. One by one, they dissolved, leaving behind nothing but dark residue that the soil drank without resistance. Elara did not look at them. Her attention was on the wolves. On the alphas who had once ruled by dominance and dread, who had stood tall only moments before, shouting commands that cracked under the weight of their own panic. They felt her now. Not as a force demanding submission. As truth. The eldest rival Alpha, the one whose roar had once scattered entire packs, dropped to one knee without realizing he had done it. His breath came shallow, his head bowed, eyes wide not with terror but recognition. Others followed. Some resisted, muscles shaking, pride fighting instinct. But the silver flame did not push them down. It reminded them of balance, of lineage older than conquest, of power that existed to protect rather than consume. Kael watched it happen with something close to or clawing through his chest. He had been born into command, raised in it, shaped by the constant pressure of expectation and fear masked as loyalty. He had learned early that ruling meant standing alone. Yet here she was, not commanding, not demanding, and the world bent anyway. Elara, he said again, quieter this time. She turned to him fully now. The silver fire parted around her shoulders, forming a mantle that moved like breath. Her eyes softened when they found him, though the power did not recede. It did not need to. He stepped closer. Each step was a choice. He crossed the threshold of her power without hesitation, and the flame recognized him, not as a threat, not as a subject, but as something woven into her path. You don't have to carry this alone, he said. She searched his face, reading him with a clarity she had never possessed before. The lies he told himself, the wounds he carried, the fear he hid behind duty. I know, she said. That's why I came back. The ancestors stirred again, not loudly, not as command, but as approval. She felt her mother's presence then. Not the memory of her scream. Not the night of exile. The warmth. The hands that had once braided her hair. The voice that had whispered, "You are not wrong for burning brighter." Tears slipped down Elara's cheeks, evaporating before they could fall. The silver fire rose higher, forming a crown of light above her head, not sharp, not cruel, but unmistakable. This was her ascension. Not into rule. Into self. She lifted her chin and faced the council. They stood rigid now, stripped of authority that had never truly been theirs. Their binding staves lay cracked at their feet, runes dulled, powerless before a truth they could not rewrite. You feared extinction, Elara said, her voice carrying without effort. So you tried to erase what you didn't understand. One elder found his voice. You will tear the balance apart. She shook her head slowly. I am the balance you broke. The words settled heavy and final. Behind her, the shrine completed its awakening. Ancient pillars locked into place with deep, resonant thunder. Symbols long buried flared alive, telling stories in light and shadow, of the silver flame's origin, of wolves who had once ruled alongside it rather than above it. History reclaimed itself. Kael felt it like a weight lifting from his shoulders. A path opening where there had only ever been walls. He knelt then. Not because instinct demanded it. Because respect did. Elara turned sharply. Kael. He looked up at her, unashamed. Not as my queen, he said. Not as prophecy. As the woman who showed me there is another way. Her breath hitched. She reached for him, pulling him to his feet. Their foreheads touched, power and presence humming between them like a living thing. Stand with me, she said. Not behind. Not above. His answer was immediate. Always. Around them, the world finished changing. The last echoes of battle faded. Wolves rose slowly, cautiously, eyes no longer clouded by fear. Some wept. Some laughed in disbelief. Many simply stood, breathing, as if they had survived something they had not yet named. Elara lowered her hands. The silver fire receded, not vanishing, never vanishing, but settling into her skin, into her bones, into a quiet, lethal calm. She was not consumed by it. She carried it. The crown of light dimmed to a soft glow before dissolving entirely, leaving behind a woman standing barefoot on ancient stone, cloak brushing her ankles, eyes steady. The world did not collapse without spectacle. It accepted her. And for the first time in her life, Elara did not feel like she was waiting for the moment it would all be taken away. She had claimed herself. And nothing, no council, no throne, no fear masquerading as law, could unmake that. The night exhaled. The moon watched. And the age of sacrifice ended where she stood. The forest had gone silent, but the silence was not peace. It was the kind of quiet that hums in your chest, reminding you that something monumental had shifted, and nothing would ever be the same again. The moon hung high, silver light pooling over the clearing, illuminating Elara standing at its center, her breath steady, her heart a drumbeat that echoed against the bones of the world. Kael remained at her side, a silent anchor. Every muscle in his body still held tension, every movement restrained, as if he knew the moment was delicate, like holding a living flame in his hands. He did not reach for her, not yet, but his eyes, golden and unyielding, followed her every subtle movement. Every twitch of a finger, every blink, every exhale. He watched her like he was memorizing the very essence of who she had become. Around them, the wolves knelt or lowered their heads, a sign not of submission but recognition. Recognition that she had survived, claimed her power, and refused to be anything less than herself. The council, still recovering from the revelation of her ascension, retreated to the edges of the clearing. They whispered in disbelief, not daring to speak too loudly, for the forest itself seemed to listen, and would punish those who dared to challenge the new balance. Elara lifted her gaze to the horizon, to where the first hints of dawn crept over the trees. Her silver fire pulsed faintly beneath her skin, a heartbeat of its own. For the first time in her life, she was not afraid of what she carried. She was not afraid of herself. And yet, even in triumph, there was a tremor of uncertainty. Because the story was not over. From the edge of the shadows, a voice, soft, distant, yet piercing, slithered across the clearing. Not one of the council, not Kael, not even a wolf. Something older, deeper. Something that had waited for her to awaken, that had watched her through every exile and betrayal, biding its time. She is not the only one, the voice whispered. The words sliced through the calm like ice through fabric. Elara froze, senses sharp, every instinct flaring. The silver fire surged again, testing, probing, alert. She felt the pulse of the forest shift. Something, or someone, lurked beyond sight, beyond understanding, beyond the boundary of the clearing. Kael stiffened beside her. His hand brushed hers, not touching fully, not claiming, but offering the connection that had always been there. "Do you hear that?" he asked, voice low, almost lost in the stillness. "I do," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling with both anticipation and dread. "And I don't like it." The wolves sensed it too. Their ears twitched, tails lowered slightly, nostrils flaring. Even the shadows seemed to pulse with awareness, as if aware of the unseen presence watching them all. Elara took a step forward, chin high, silver fire brightening with quiet defiance. Then we find it, she said, voice steady despite the flutter of fear in her chest. Whatever it is, whoever it is, we face it. Together. Kael's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, to tell her to step back, to wait. But he didn't. Because the fire he had once only witnessed from afar now radiated from her, and he understood that this was her choice. And in that choice, she had claimed something no threat could take away, herself. A long silence stretched over the clearing, broken only by the low rustle of leaves and the distant cry of a lone wolf. The council dared not move. They had seen power beyond their comprehension, and the silver fire was not merely flame. It was judgment. It was a reckoning. It was living proof that prophecy was more than words, it was alive in the blood and bone of those meant to carry it. Then the voice whispered again, closer this time. The true Alpha hasn't risen, yet. Elara's breath caught. A shiver ran through her spine. Her heart beat faster, not from fear alone, but from recognition that the story she thought she had completed was only the first chapter. That beyond the victory, beyond the transformation, lay a world that still demanded answers, and still tested courage, love, and trust. Kael's golden eyes met hers. No words passed between them, but the understanding was absolute. Whatever awaited, whatever darkness had lingered beyond the forest, they would face it side by side. She let her gaze sweep over the clearing one last time, the shrine, the wolves, the fractured council, the ruins awakening in subtle, trembling response to her presence. Every heartbeat of this place, every whisper in the shadows, seemed to pulse in sync with her own silver fire. And then she spoke, voice clear, deliberate, carrying both challenge and promise. Would you have chosen her, or feared her too? The words lingered in the air, an echo, a question that belonged not just to the council, not just to the wolves, but to anyone listening beyond the boundaries of the forest. A pause. The world held its breath. And in that pause, the story found its tether. The fire that had burned so violently in exile and betrayal now burned with choice and defiance. It was hers, unclaimed by anyone, uncontested. She turned to Kael. His hand found hers, fully this time, no hesitation, no distance. In that contact, there was understanding, there was safety, and there was a promise neither of them needed to speak aloud. The story isn't finished, Kael said quietly. No, she agreed, silver light shimmering across her skin, illuminating the determination etched into every line of her face. But now, we write it ourselves. And there, in the moonlit clearing, surrounded by wolves who had bowed in recognition, ruins that hummed with ancient memory, and a world that had just witnessed its first act of reckoning, Elara took a deep breath and exhaled the last of fear that had ever held her. The silver fire pulsed, alive, vibrant, endless. And in the stillness that followed, the narrator's voice lingers with the echo of promise, the question that will haunt every listener. If this story lit something inside you, subscribe to Moonbound Werewolf Romance Stories. Because here, we tell tales that burn. The night deepened, but the fire within her, and within those who dared to listen, would not dim. The clearing settled into a fragile quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that hums in your bones, a silence pregnant with anticipation and unseen eyes. The forest no longer trembled from the chaos, it shifted with purpose, bending subtly as if it, too, recognized that something monumental had unfolded, something that would ripple far beyond the borders of what anyone had thought possible. Elara's silver fire had dimmed from its full brilliance, settling like liquid light beneath her skin. It pulsed faintly, a heartbeat intertwined with her own, steady and alive. She breathed slowly, each inhalation tasting of ash, rain, and victory. The wind whispered through the trees, caressing her face, carrying with it the scent of wet earth, burned leaves, and something else she could not place, an unfamiliar promise, cold and distant, but alive. Kael remained at her side. Not in shadow, not in dominance, but as a presence that balanced hers. He did not need to speak. His silence held trust, acknowledgement, and the unshakable truth that whatever had happened tonight had bound them in ways words could not reach. His hand rested lightly against hers, the touch grounding them both in the reality of the moment, yet leaving enough space for the electric tension that had always crackled between them. But the world beyond the clearing had not forgotten. The council retreated, eyes wide, breaths ragged, authority broken, but not yet reconciled. Some wolves lingered at the edges, wary, hearts still clattering against ribcages too accustomed to fear. They did not dare approach. They did not dare judge. And the ruins of the shrine, now glowing faintly with the remnants of ancient magic, hummed like a living thing, alive to the echoes of her ascension. Elara turned, scanning the forest, the shadows, the edge where light and darkness met. Her chest rose and fell with controlled force, every muscle taut and ready, because even in victory, she knew the truth, the story had only just begun. The silver fire pulsed stronger now, not in response to threat, but in response to recognition. Something watched, patient and unseen, lurking in the depth of darkness that even moonlight could not touch. The ground trembled beneath her boots. Not violently, not yet, but with a subtle pulse, a rhythmic vibration that reminded her that the earth itself was alive and awake. She felt it through her bones, a warning and a beckoning all at once. A shadow moved between the trees. Just for a moment. Just enough for her pulse to spike, silver fire flaring instinctively beneath her skin. She froze, eyes narrowing, heart hammering with the thrill of awareness sharpened by danger. She is not the only one. The voice whispered. Soft, low, serpentine. Not cruel, but impossible to ignore. It carried across the forest without moving, threading into the air, wrapping around trees, stones, and the ruins like mist that could not be swept away. Elara stiffened. A shiver ran down her spine, cold and electric. The words were both warning and prophecy, a promise of trials yet unseen, dangers yet unfaced. Her silver fire pulsed brighter in response, not fear, but readiness, a declaration that she would not yield. Kael's grip on her hand tightened slightly. His golden eyes scanned the shadows, alert, protective, but there was something more, curiosity, and perhaps the first trace of wonder at what waited beyond their victory. "Did you hear that?" he murmured, voice low, threading between the rustling trees. "I did," Elara said, voice steady despite the sudden thrum of adrenaline in her chest. "And it's not over. Not for me. Not for any of us." The wolves shivered, low growls vibrating in their throats as if aware that unseen forces had begun to move, that threats and truths were circling just beyond reach. Even the council, trembling on the edge of the clearing, sensed the change. Their authority, once absolute, had been fractured irreparably. But they did not understand what was coming. None of them did. Elara raised her chin, silver fire faintly streaking across her shoulders, illuminating the contours of her face in the pale moonlight. She was calm now, but not complacent. Not naive. Every instinct she had learned in years of exile, betrayal, and survival screamed that this calm was the eye of a storm that had yet to break. Kael stepped forward beside her, matching her intensity without overshadowing it. "Whatever that means," he said quietly, almost to himself, "we face it together." She met his gaze, her eyes steady and unflinching. "Together," she repeated, letting the word settle like a promise. The ruins pulsed faintly in acknowledgement, and the silver light at her skin responded, glowing softly like the heartbeat of the forest itself. The whisper came again, closer this time, threading through the trees and winding through the air like smoke. "The true Alpha hasn't risen, yet." The words struck her with cold clarity. Her jaw tightened. Her silver fire pulsed more strongly now, not in fear, but in resolve. She was ready. She would not run. She would not hide. And she would not allow herself to be used as a pawn in a story written by those too afraid to wield their own power. The forest seemed to lean closer, listening, watching, aware of the tension between the unseen and the illuminated. Elara inhaled deeply, letting the cold night air fill her lungs. Let the pulse of the earth settle her, let the weight of her own fire steady her. Kael mirrored her breath. His hand remained in hers, warm, grounding, steadying, but the subtle electricity of shared energy hummed between them, reminding them both that their bond was now as much forged by fire as by trust. She lifted her gaze to the horizon, where the first hints of dawn bled through the trees. Light and shadow danced across her skin, silver and gold entwined, a prelude to the battles yet to come, the alliances yet to be formed, the enemies yet unseen. Her voice rose, quiet but powerful, carrying the weight of experience and the clarity of purpose. "Whatever waits, we will face it. Not as legend. Not as prophecy. Not as pawn or weapon. But as ourselves." The whisper dissolved into the night. The shadow withdrew, unseen but lingering, a reminder that the story had only begun. And somewhere deep in the forest, beyond sight, a heartbeat answered hers, a pulse she could not yet see, but she knew was there. Waiting. Watching. Testing. The clearing exhaled. The shrine hummed faintly, alive, responsive. The wolves stirred, sensing not an end, but a beginning. The council trembled, uncomprehending. And Kael's golden gaze met hers with unshakable resolve. She turned fully to him, fire in her veins, resolve in her eyes, voice steady, certain, and prophetic. "This isn't over." The night leaned closer, listening. The moon lingered, silver and unblinking. And somewhere, in the shadows beyond sight, a voice whispered once more. "She is not the only one." The world had shifted. The story had turned. And for anyone watching, anyone listening, anyone breathing in the rhythm of the forest, one truth remained: the saga was far from finished, and the fire had only just begun to burn. And in that lingering moment, the narrator's voice carries, soft yet resolute, drawing every listener into the next chapter, planting obsession, anticipation, and the need to follow her story wherever it leads. If you thought you had seen everything, if you felt the fire tonight, subscribe to Moonbound Werewolf Romance Stories, because here, the tales that burn never end. The night deepened, shadows stretched, and the forest waited. Always waiting. Always listening. Always ready.